Hello neighbors, it's Brad here at eTrailer, and today we're taking a look at installing the Stealth Hitch hidden rack receiver on a 2024 BMW X5. Now this is what your hitch is going to look like when it's installed, and believe it or not, it is installed. The name Stealth implies the fact that it is going to be completely hidden until you're ready to use your receiver. And once you are ready, it's as simple as twisting the handle back, popping this in place, and then once snapped in, you're ready to go. Now, first thing out the gate that I need to point out is going to be the sticker that's on our receiver, and that simply says not for towing, and that's because this is simply just the rack receiver kit. This is a really great option if you're just planning on using a bike rack or cargo carrier like our neighbor today, but if you do plan on towing, you're going to want to pick up the towing kit. Not only will it come with a ball mount, it'll still come with the receiver so you can put your accessories on, but also it comes with the wiring to allow you to have 7-pole and 4-pole on your vehicle, and you'll be able to tow. Now this is a 2" by 2" receiver tube opening when you have it in place, and that's going to be awesome for a lot of different accessories. 2" by 2" is pretty much the standard, so when choosing bike racks and cargo carriers, you'll have tons of options, and those are all going to stay in place with a 5/8 pin and clip. That does not come with our hidden hitch today, but a lot of times your accessories will have them. Now, if you want to pick up a locking pin and clip, that's a great option. That way you can lock this in place with your accessories on. You can leave them on there and know that no one's going to walk away. Now, speaking of security, this also has a locking feature as well. So once you have your receiver tube in, you can just simply lock that in place and no one's going to be able to walk away with your receiver tube opening. And then when you are ready, you can unlock it. It's also got a nice cover around the tumbler to keep it clean as well. Now, since this one specifically isn't designed for towing, we're only going to need to adhere to our tongue weight rating, which is pretty good. It's 600 pounds, so you can get a 4-bike bike rack loaded up, no problem. I don't worry about that going over the weight limit, or even a cargo carrier loaded up. That's a decent amount of weight. Now, if you do go with the towing kit, it's pretty high for a gross trailer weight rating, so if that's something that you're looking to do potentially, you're going to want to pick up that kit. And that's going to have a ball mount already included. There's no rise or drop, but again, you'll have that availability to be able to at least tow a trailer. When our receiver tube is installed, it sticks out a decent amount, which is totally actually not a bad thing, because a lot of your folding accessories, when they're stowed, will be in a vertical position, and you got plenty of space here. You might not be able to open up the tailgate and clear it, depends on the accessory, but it is nice that it sticks out far. It's not going to make contact with the rear fascia. Now, as far as the ground clearance goes, it's also pretty decent. It's coming in right at about 14.5 inches, and that's going to be important to note for some of your accessories. When you put them on, they're going to extend the vehicle, so as you go up an incline, they'll want to tilt towards the ground, so just kind of keep that in mind. But overall, that's a pretty good ground clearance. And I do like this system. For a lot of your luxury vehicles out there, you can get the Stealth Hitch, and this one's no different. And so you get a really clean look when you're not using that hitch, which is great because this is a sporty SUV. You want to have a clean look, but you still need to use it as a car and tote your accessories around, so you kind of get the best of both worlds. The downside is the installation of this is one of the more tricky ones that we do here, and that's kind of common with BMWs and a lot of your German vehicles. They're very well put together, but that also means they're very hard to take apart to get your hitch installed. And really it comes down to just getting the fascia off, and it's going to bolt up exactly where your bumper beam was, and that part's not very hard. But in order to get your fascia off, there's a lot that needs to come out, a good majority of your rear area of the cargo, your taillights, and it's just overall a little bit trickier than most vehicles. If you're fairly handy, you should be able to be fine, but if you're not, and this is your first hitch install, take a look at the video, make sure that this is something you're willing to tackle, and I would set aside a good afternoon or maybe a full day to get this knocked out. But I'm going to walk you through all the steps, and a pro too is the installation instructions are really good. You can follow them step by step. It's just a lot. So not to scare you off, I just want to let you know what you're kind of getting into, and I'll walk you through all the steps to make sure you get it. So let's take a look at that. To begin our installation, we're going to want to get our hatch opened up, drop down the tailgate, and we have 2 panels on each side that we're going to remove. Our driver's side, this just has a pull down tab, so if you pull this down, you may need to open up the cargo cover here, but we'll just pull this out and set it aside. The one on the passenger side, you may need to wedge something in here to get it out, but you can see this just pops out fairly easily. Now we're going to want to head into the rear of the vehicle where we have our cargo cover, we're going to be popping off these plastic tabs. They're right next to the rear seats. So you just kind of pull back on the tab. On each side, there's going to be a T30 Torx bit bolt. We're going to go ahead and get these removed. Now, BMWs are very well put together, and that means there's going to be a lot of hardware that we're going to be removing. I recommend having a nice organized spot to keep all that hardware, and that way when reinstallation comes along, you'll have everything ready to go. So now we're going to want to raise up this cargo cover, and we're going to get the strut removed. So just be careful, since it's not on those hardware anymore. We're going to want to lift this up, and we'll raise this to give us access to our strut. And there's going to be a metal clip that goes to the top that kind of locks it all in place. So take a flathead screwdriver and just kind of put that in that back edge, and then just twist it enough to where that metal clip should pop back. You don't want to completely remove it. And then with that kind of popped out, we should be able to just pull this strut off. We'll leave this here, and then we'll take our cargo cover and set this aside. At this point, we're going to remove our battery access panel, and depending on the model, some of them will have a 8mm screws. I don't see that on ours. It's just a series of plastic push pins that go along here. And to get these popped out pretty easy, you can use a flathead screwdriver, just kind of wedge it in one of the slots, give it a quick twist, and you should get that center portion to pop out, and then you can remove the rest of the plastic push pin. So follow this panel. It looks like we have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7 total. So just kind of go along the edge and get those removed. I'll remove our panel and set this aside. Now we're going to be removing our threshold, which is going to be this section here, and there's a bunch of T20 Torx bits. In fact, there's 4 of them that we're going to need to remove, and so we'll find one here. Our T20 Torx bits are going to be found here, 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 and here, so get those 4 removed. Now we should be able to just kind of pull up on the threshold and sneak this out here. Now we do have this kind of panel for our lift gate that we can also kind of lift with it at the same time. And it's kind of wedged in the weather stripping, so just kind of pull up on this, and once it kind of gets separated from that rubber, we should be able to get this removed. We're going to head over to the passenger side. We'll find that we have this panel. We're going to get this removed, and there's a plastic cap located in here, and with just either a pick or a flathead screwdriver, pop that out pretty easily. The instructions say that it's a T25 Torx bit, but it kind of looks like it's an 8mm bolt, so I'll go ahead with my socket and get that removed. And we're going to head up to where the seats are. You can see the seat latch here, so fold that forward. That's going to give us access to this plastic cap. We're just going to kind of pry this off. And tucked back here is going to be a 10mm bolt, so we'll go ahead and get that removed. Now be careful here, because once you loosen it up, it's very possible it's going to want to drop in here, so just kind of take your time, and if you need to, you can use a magnet once it's loose to get this out. Now you're going to want to grab this portion of the seat and just kind of pull this. It's going to pop out of this kind of plug that kind of holds it in here. Now there's obviously wires attached for the airbag, so just be careful here. But there's going to be a plastic push pin located right below this that we're going to get removed. There's going to be 2 plastic push pins on the bottom side of this cargo cover, so you'll find one here and one kind of tucked up there. We'll go ahead and get those removed. Now we need to dislodge our trim panel, so if you just kind of pull on here, this is pretty rigid. You just kind of give it a little bit of pressure here, and we're going to try to slide this over this plastic cover that goes on our latch here. We can also separate this, making it a little bit easier. That's not in the instructions, but it seems like that's going to be the best way for us to get this removed. You may have to fight the weather stripping here if you need to. Sometimes you can pull this off. You got to be careful though, because sometimes there's adhesive or grease on this. But this should give us enough to be able to kind of pry this out. There we are. Once you kind of slide it over that latch, be careful. We do have some electrical connections that we're going to separate. So we have our 12-volt power here, and we'll just pull this red locking tab back. push on this and it should separate. We also have another electrical connector that goes to a light here, so be careful. It's pretty tight and it's hard to reach this plug here. For the light, I'm actually going to dislodge it from our cargo cover. The plug is not very easy to separate from what I could gather. It's a little tab here, but this kind of just slides out, so I think that's going to be an easier option for us. And now we can set this aside. Now right above where our fuse panel is, there's an opening in the kind of insulation here, and you're going to find a 12mm nut. It can be a 10 depending on your vehicle. The instructions will state both of them, but ours is a 12mm, so I'll go ahead and get that removed. Now the instructions don't tell us to remove the driver's side panel. It does make it a little bit tricky for this step here because we're going to be removing a 12mm nut for these taillights. And to find it, you just kind of have to peel back. There's some of this insulation here. So reach up above this bracket and then you should find the nut kind of tucked right, and it's kind of tucked up in this area. So I'm going to try to get my socket on it and get that removed. Now we have the plastic panel that goes right by the taillight here. We're just going to pull this out. There's going to be just a series of clips, so you can see up top and on the bottom there. And that's going to give us access to these Torx bits. So we'll go ahead and get the plastic covers removed on both sides. These are going to be T30 Torx bits. Now it's going to be tricky to get into these, so I have a bit that I put into this small ratchet. Otherwise it's going to be hard to get a straight shot with a larger bit. So this is going to be the method that I'll be using. Now, once we get these removed, we also have this 8mm that we're going to take off as well. Now we'll just repeat on the other side. With that hardware removed, we should be able to get our taillight out fairly easily. Just kind of slide it out. This is where that 12mm bolt was, so you just kind of bring that out. Now we need to unplug our vehicle's taillight by pulling down this red tab and then pushing on the center. And now we can set our taillight aside, and we'll just repeat on the other side. Now we're going to go to our wheel well, and we're going to be peeling this kind of fender trim back. There's going to be an 8mm bolt that's there. And to get this out, they recommend using a plastic trim tool. There's clips here. They are kind of tricky, and you're wedging between the clear coat of your wheel well liner and your fascia. So what I've found, I do run painter's tape here because as we pull the fascia off and put it back on, it can rub against it and you don't want any damage. But instead of using a plastic clip, what I'm doing here is just kind of pull back on this. And if we can get this bottom one to separate, it kind of lodges in the bottom. So just a little bit of pressure. We'll get the first one out, and that's going to make it a lot easier. So just kind of work it here. And don't pull this too far back. You don't want this to crease, causing damage to your paint. So just kind of take your fingers and pull this along, nice and slow, take your time. So this is what your clips look like. So they want you to kind of press in on this, but I think the way we popped it out worked out pretty well. And once you're kind of pulled back this far, this will give you access to that 8mm screw. So we'll go ahead and get that removed. And we're going to repeat on the other side, but something that I'm going to do just to, again, help us for when we pull the fascia off is take some tape and run it along these plastic clips. Now we need to remove our reflectors, as there's going to be a screw holding in the fascia here. Now these are notoriously kind of tricky, so take your time. This one actually came out fairly easily. I just kind of pulled on this edge, and there's going to be a clip kind of holding this in. The tricky part is this is slotted in here, and this needs to pull straight out. So be careful, because a lot of times these edges will get pretty tight here, and these are notoriously known for cracking. So just take your time here. If you do chip off part of it, don't beat yourself up. It's very common on these. With the reflectors removed, we can gain access to that 8mm. We'll get that removed on both sides. Now underneath the vehicle, we're going to be removing quite a few bolts that are holding in this underbody panel. There's a total of 14 of them, and they are mostly 10 millimeters, but there are a few 8s tucked in there as well. So go through and get these removed. Now on each side, there's going to be these side panels, and there's going to be 6 screws per side. So we'll have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. Go ahead with your 10 millimeter and get those removed. Now we're going to get ready to pull our fascia off, and I recommend getting an extra set of hands to pull this off, and also having a safe place set up to put your fascia while doing the hitch install is going to be key. Now we're just going to kind of pull back here. And the clips sometimes can be tricky on these. Some of them aren't as bad as others, but you want to make sure that you're not breaking the clips. So as you kind of work your way towards the middle here, just kind of apply pressure that's nice and equal, you know, not really putting too much on it to where it'll crack. Now, when you get to these, this is kind of similar to what's tucked under the body along here. So if you need to, you can use a plastic trim tool to kind of push down on that tab, and that's going to help unlock it. Pulling slightly outward to keep pressure on that to separate it. You can push on that tab. And there we go. And then we'll just kind of continue on. Now we're going to get kind of up to this portion. We'll get the other side. And then the middle's a little bit different as well with those clips. So first get the 2 sides loosened up. Now on the center portion here, you have your tailgate that you need to kind of put at a slight angle to gain access. These clips kind of lock in here. So you're going to want to put pressure against this to unlatch it. So the plastic trim tool comes in handy here while kind of pulling back to get this to separate. You may have to kind of pull from the side, and having that extra set of hands is going to help here so you can kind of keep that pressure while you separate them. Now there's clips along the side here, just kind of pull on that lightly to get that to release, and we should start getting a gap here, and that's where we can you know, pull the fascia to keep that pressure while working on these tabs. So I found that you just kind of pry in the center on them. A lot of times that'll kind of get that to release. And then the other ones actually came pretty easily here, so we'll kind of make sure that we have all the clips released. Now as we pull this back, don't pull too hard on it. You just want to make sure that it separates, but we have a main harness that's plugged in on the passenger side, and we'll just push down on these tabs to get this to separate. Now underneath our tailgate, we do have these plastic panels that we're going to remove, and there's going to be 2 plastic push pins on each side. So we'll get the 2 of this one removed. Take your time here. You're pretty close to paint on your vehicle, so you want to make sure that you're not scratching it in the process. Now underneath there's going to be a tab. There's an alignment pin, but right here where it's molded in, just push that tab towards the front of the vehicle. That should get this separated, and it looks like there's going to be one here, but we'll go ahead and get the other side taken off for now as well. Now there's going to be 2 of those clips on this panel to get it removed, and mostly it's so we can gain access to the hardware on our bumper beam. Now if you reach up behind your impact bar, you're going to have tabs that are very similar to what we had on that side. Now there's going to be 2 plastic tabs that are a locking tab very similar to this, and they're going to be very hard to get to from up top. So what I recommend doing is kind of reach up and then pry those out while putting pressure, and then you can get this to be removed. We'll go ahead and do the same on the other side. Now we also have this basket here that's for our kick sensor wire, or the wand, and we're going to go ahead and get this removed. I'm not going to unplug it. We're going to have it just kind of hang off to the side for now, but just go along the front here and get those plastic trim rivets taken out. Now we can remove our bumper beam. It's going to be 4 nuts. The studs are kind of tucked in these notches here. There are going to be 18 millimeter sockets to get these removed, so go ahead and do that now. Now, before we pull our impact beam off, we're going to need to remove the nut that's holding on the exhaust hanger to the bumper beam. It's going to be a 13 millimeter socket. We're going to have one on each side, so go ahead and get those removed. Now, while on the passenger side, we also have this plastic push pin that's holding our wiring into the bumper beam. So just pry that out. I would recommend putting that tailgate down and just making sure you're not obviously making contact with the paint while removing this. Now you can grab your Stealth hitch, and we're going to place this over those studs, and then we'll be putting those factory 18mm nuts back on. So let's just slide this on for now. Now while you're feeding it on, it may get tight around those threads, so just a nice little bump from a dead blow hammer should get this to where it sits nice and flush. And before we get our hardware in place, we'll take our new brackets that we have, and these will slide on the bottom, and that's going to be our new mounting point for our exhaust. So just make sure that the tab is on the outside and facing towards the rear of the vehicle on both sides. We can then take our 18mm nuts and get these all hand tightened on our hitch. Now keep in mind our bumper beam is not going back in place. The hitch simply replaces it. So we're going to get these snugged down and come back with a torque wrench, but something I'd recommend doing is our new exhaust brackets. It's slotted, so there's a little bit of room obviously, but I'm going to try to get this alignment pin. This is going to go in the front. Try to get that as lined as possible. So ours happens to be all the way in, so when we snug that down, we're not having to stretch that exhaust over to get it mounted up. But we'll go ahead and get this all snugged down first. Now we'll come back with our torque wrench. Torque settings are found in the instruction manual, so we'll go through, get these all torqued down properly. Now, as far as torque wrenches go, you're going to need more than likely a 1/2 inch to get the torque setting. Later on, we'll also have a pretty hefty one for our receiver block. So if you're picking one up, we have these available here at eTrailer. You can generally go to an auto parts store and rent one for free, but this is going to be a crucial tool for the installation of your hitch. With our hardware torqued down, we can now go ahead and get our panels snap back in place, and we can put our plastic push pins also in place. So we're going to go ahead and get our exhaust put back in place using the new hardware in the kit. So we have our bolt, we're going to put our flat washer on. We'll feed this up. This will align into that front hole. And to get this tightened down, we have a flange nut that we'll just put on here, and it's going to be a 1/2 inch socket and ratchet to get this tightened down. So we'll get this snugged up. And then we'll just repeat on the other side. Now we're going to grab our rack receiver and the bolts that were ran through them. Now, if you picked up the tow package, the wiring does get a little bit different. There's also safety chain loops and a bracket for that wiring. So yours will change a little bit, but the rest of the actual hitch installation is about the same. So whether you have the tow or just the rack receiver, a lot of the same steps are going to be the exact same up until about this point. So we'll get our bolts ran through. Just make sure you have the handle on the passenger side, and our key should be on the left. Something else you might want to do, there's a rubber cap on the bottom. If you peel that out, that's where your keys are going to be located. There's a 5-digit code that's on there, and in your instructions there's going to be a spot that you can write that down. That way, if you ever have to replace the keys, you'll have that code to be able to get those specifically towards your hitch. But at this point, I'll just get these threaded on. And these are going to be a 15/16, and we're going to use a socket as well as an open end wrench to get these tightened down, and we're going to torque them down as well. So get your wrench on the head of the bolt, and then we'll tighten down on the nut side. Now it's pretty tight here, so if you need to, maybe an extension might help kind of get a straighter shot at this nut. Come back, use the torque settings found in the instruction manual, get these torqued down properly. Now we can get our kick panel sensor back in place here. Now we're just going to be using 3 of the plastic push pins, and that's what this plate is for. So get the center one in place first, and then we'll get the 2 outside ones put in place as well. Now if you unplugged yours, make sure you plug that back in. We didn't, so we just can get this back in place and we'll be good. Now we do need to trim out our underbody panel where our hitch receiver is going to sit, because we obviously need access to get this to snap in and snap out when we need our hitch. Now it's pretty easy here because we're going to follow, it's kind of, we got some perforations here that will follow. It does change a little bit on this side, so as that swoops in, we're actually going to kind of cut this open here. You can use a Dremel. I'm using an oscillating tool that works really well. Really any cutting method to cut through this. Just know that you do have some heat shield portion here, so just be careful. It can get pretty sharp, and you might need something that's pretty sharp to cut through this. It's pretty thick, so we'll get this notched out. Now we'll just go ahead, we'll get this removed. And since there is this heat shield, we're going to be reaching up to get our block in and out. So I'm going to go through with a file and just get all these burrs as well as the metal here nice and smooth. That way it's going to be smooth every time we put that block in place. So using a file is a great way to do that. So with this trimmed out, we're going to just start putting everything back together in the reverse order that we took everything off. Now keep in mind, it's with this fascia in particular, you're going to want to get those center clips locked in and then just kind of work your way around the edges. Again, just kind of the opposite of what we did. So I'll go ahead, I'm going to get everything put back in place, and just take your time. And then we'll come back and I'll show you how this hitch works. Now I got everything reinstalled. Took a little bit, but it came together nicely. And now once you are ready to put your hitch receiver in, pretty easy. You'll just take your key, which if you haven't removed that plug to gain them, that's going to be in here. And we'll just undo our tumbler. So just kind of spin this around until you get it to drop in. And then once you unlock it, you're going to see it's spring loaded. It should push out. And at this point, that's going to allow us to twist our handle back. It's going to lock in and that pin will drop out. From here, we just take our receiver block, raise this up, give it a quick shove. You should kind of hear that click. And once this locks into place, we know that it's good to go. You can lock this by just pushing in that tumbler, twisting, and then you can cap this back up and you're ready to go. So with our receiver block in, all that's left to do is load up your cargo carrier bike rack and hit the road. And if not, you can just simply remove this and maintain that super clean look on your X5. And that was a look and installation of the Stealth Hitch hidden rack receiver on a 2024 BMW X5.